It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I keep coming back to 19 people indicted, Trump and 18 of his Klan members, and 30 unindicted co-conspirators. And I want the names. I eventually want to know, because this could be like a bingo game, if you will. I want Lindsey Graham to be on there somewhere. There's a bunch of people I want to be somewhere on the Scott Perry, my congressman, would love to see that, but I know this is a Georgia case. This is here, but this is a wide net that Fani Willis has cast, and much wider than the DOJ, than Jack Smith and that, which is why I'm going to find it interesting to see where she goes with all this and how many rats actually do jump ship. But here to share some thoughts on the indictment, what it means, and just how big this is. I've asked Aaron Sherb to come talk with us. Aaron's the Senior Director of Legislative Affairs with Common Cause. You can check out their website, commoncause.org. Aaron, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again, Rick.
So, I'm looking at this. This is a massive indictment. It was 98 pages. You've got 19 people, named, indicted, 30 unnamed co-conspirators. It's almost like the whole Republican Party's been indicted.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a very comprehensive investigation. Look, this was 2.5 years in the making. Hundreds of witnesses, thousands of pages of evidence that were reviewed diligently by career civil servants who are just whose mission is to uncover the truth and to achieve justice. And so, this is a very comprehensive investigation that was undertaken here. And as you know, this is the fourth indictment for the former president. It's a sad day. It's a tragic day in American democracy when he was indicted. This is his fourth indictment in this year. He's now been indicted on or faces like 91 different felony counts for an array of crimes across 4 different jurisdictions. And so it's really a sad day. The first time ever a former president has been indicted this year now. And again, this is the fourth time.
Yeah, but this is unprecedented. I mean, not in my lifetime have I seen the kind of behavior we saw on January 6th. Look, there have always been complaints of, hey, this happened or that happened, but everyone always said, hey, we lost the race. We're gonna come back and we'll fight next time. There's always been that kind of that sense that the rule of law, the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power, that was more important than petty grievances, than self-centeredness until now. And that's why I think this is so important. I think this is a moment in 50, 100 years, our great-great-grandchildren are going to look back and go, wow, look how bad they were. And I want to be on the right side of history, I think.
Yeah, look, I mean, the former president is an extreme danger to U.S. democracy, to political norms, and the peaceful transfer of power, and and the rule of law. Look, now he must be treated as any other American would in the legal system. He'll get his day in court and is presumed innocent until proven guilty by a jury of everyday Americans. But these are extremely, extremely serious charges here. Not only in Georgia, but in the 3 previous indictments as well.
Now, Trump put out on Truth Social that there is going to be a large, complex, detailed, but irrefutable report on the presidential election fraud, which took place in Georgia. It's almost complete, I guess, and it's going to be presented on Monday. It's conclusive. It's a conclusive report. All charges should be dropped against him and others, and he will be completely exonerated, according to his post. And he wants to go after the real riggers. And I'm going, I look at the real riggers and I look at what Republican legislatures have done across this country with vote suppression and I mean, purging voters and, all of the schemes that they've come up with. We don't talk about any of that stuff. So I'm curious who he sees as the riggers.
Yeah, well, he knows he lost the election. He was already planning this even before the November 2020 election. They were laying the groundwork to try to claim, various conspiracy theories and various, quote unquote, voter fraud, which they knew was basically non-existent. So this is a plan in place that they were formulating before the election even happened. And so I think that just goes to show that, look, this is all about him holding onto power, him putting himself above the rule of law and thinking that he's, essentially a king or a monarch, and that, the will of the people, the will of the voters just don't really matter. And, the insurrection, the attempted coup at the Capitol was just a big attempt to, basically ignore the will of the people, ignore the will of the voters, and trying to, when he called Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, a Republican, lifelong Republican, and told him to find, 11,780 votes, I believe, the Republican Secretary of State stood up for the rule of law and stood up for the millions of voters in Georgia and said, no, Mr. President, we are not ignoring the will of the people. And so I think, this there'll be more details like that come out in an eventual trial for this case in Georgia. But ultimately, it comes down to respecting the will of the people and the voices of the people.
Yeah. So my mind keeps going. Of the 49 people who are involved in this, how many of them are jumping ship as we speak? Because as it's been explained to me, Fani Willis has used this tactic in the past, and that large number, has been dwindled down to a smaller number with all those other people turning state's evidence. Do you expect that to happen here?
Well, I think, certainly, a prosecutor has a certain number of tools at one's disposal to they're obviously, this is a very comprehensive investigation. This did not occur overnight. They've obtained, thousands of pages of evidence, conducted hundreds of interviews. And so, she and her team have likely significant information that points, that implicates a number of individuals here. And so I think they'll certainly, it's hard to know their strategy exactly, but I think, we'll see that play out, as the trial date approaches, whenever that might be.
Yeah. I had a lawyer friend say that his concern is that this is so big, that there's so much here that it's easy to get lost in what the point is. Do you have any fear in that this is so comprehensive, that this is so big that you may not be able to whittle this down to get a jury to understand it?
Well, sure. I mean, the former president has a long-standing record of trying to delay, of stretching things out, of making certain process arguments here. But again, ultimately, it comes down to respecting the will of the people, respecting the will of the voters, and making sure that their voices were heard and are heard going forward, and that something like January 6th can never happen again. And so I think, ultimately this is, about the rule of law and accountability. And we have a judicial system in place, as imperfect as it is in times, but, there's a legal process in place, and, justice is being carried out here right before our very eyes.
Yeah. Well, as they say, the wheels of justice, turn slowly. And here we are seeing them turn very slowly. You're listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Aaron Sherb. He's Senior Director of Legislative Affairs at Common Cause, commoncause.org, the website if you want to take a look at the work that they do. And talking about the wheels turning slowly, almost the second I heard about the fake electors, I'm like, why aren't they locked up? Why haven't we tried them? I know Dana Nessel, the Attorney General in Michigan, is charged. They're fake electors. Now you're seeing these fake electors. I'm still curious why the day they handed in their homework, someone didn't go, wait a minute, this is wrong. Arrest those people. But here we are, finally someone looking at these fake electors.
Yeah, I mean, look, justice sometimes takes a long time to achieve, and our legal process, it takes a while to gather evidence, to conduct interviews, to do research, to find information. A lot of these people didn't necessarily weren't forthright in handing over information immediately when they were asked for it. So there's a subpoena. Subpoenas take time, and so I think it's important to get this right, to get the details of this investigation right. And again, it's sometimes there are inefficiencies in our legal system, but ultimately, I think justice will be served here, and the former president will be ultimately held accountable for his actions.
Any chance this gets moved to federal court?
Hard to tell. You probably saw, the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, requested his trial at least be moved to federal court and tried to, order to try to dismiss that. But, hard to know exactly.
So the reason I bring that up is, what's the difference then? Explain the difference between, doing this in a state court or a federal court. I mean, it's the same prosecutor, same charges. What would be different?
Well, I think, there are a couple, so one of the charges that the former president faces is under a RICO Act, or Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's a state law. The former president, if he becomes president again, or a future president, could not pardon him for, under that state law. I think, so that's kind of one angle or one dynamic. I think also the former president thinks that ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court, if something eventually gets up to there, I think, since he appointed 3 members of the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, I think he thinks that they will somehow be more favorable to him in the end. And I think, given the number of federal judges that he appointed to the court, I think he, somehow expects or demands a certain loyalty from them. So I think that's part of the calculus, at least, for trying to switch this to a federal court.
Yeah. Anything in this indictment that surprised you? Anything that caught your attention? Because look, there's been a lot of talk about what was going to happen. I think a lot of people knew the RICO thing was going to be the direction they went. Anything surprise you?
Well, I think just the number of co-conspirators, both named and unnamed, in here. Like you, I'm very curious about all these other ones who are unnamed in there. Obviously, this was not just a one act show. There were many people who were involved in scheming, conniving, developing these conspiracy theories to try to overturn the election and overturn the will of the people. So I think there's certainly a lot more people who could be implicated here. So I think those names will potentially come out as the trial approaches.
Now, on the democracy front, and I know Common Cause is an organization that fights vehemently to maintain our democracy and voting rights and all of this. Why is this important? Why? Because I have a whole bunch of my Trump supporter friends say, "Well, this is a political witch hunt." You've heard all of it, but their bottom line is we don't really need to do this. It wasn't a big deal. We should just let sleeping dogs lie. What's wrong with that argument?
Well, Trump was unsuccessful in his attempted insurrection and coup in 2021. He's learning things. Next time they're learning things, they may try it again. And so, if there aren't penalties, if there isn't accountability for the bad actors last time, somebody else is going to do it again. If not Donald Trump, somebody else in some party, down the road. So they have to be held accountable. They have to be punished for the attempt to overturn the will of the people, or else it's going to get green light some other future insurrection.
No, I mean, it's an excellent answer. But the other part of this is my concern is someone a lot smarter, someone a lot more tactical, a little more strategic, someone not as blatant, not as outward, not as open, may try this in the future and actually get away with it. Someone, because I got to tell you, I think someone who wasn't as extreme as Trump. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's creating a playbook. We're in completely uncharted territory here, and so like you said, somebody smarter, more devious, who's had experience in government before, who can marshal the resources to try to pull something like this off again. Yeah, totally worry about that as well. Yeah,
but here's the thing: one of the defense arguments that I'm seeing, and maybe you've seen it too, is, well, he didn't know any better. He's just listening to advice of counsel. Do you think that holds water at all, given the fact that he ran a campaign on lock her up and all of the stuff that he had done? Does that hold any water?
I mean, that's rubbish. I mean, there were documents, saying that their communications that they were planning this before and I think several months before the 2020 election, that they were already planning to lay the groundwork by invoking, quote unquote, voter fraud. And so, this is, fed into the big lie. And so they were kind of laying the groundwork for this, months before the election even occurred. So I think, who's to say they won't try that again, or aren't already trying to do that again for November 2024 if he again is the nominee next year. No.
So here's the last line of questioning I've got for you, because again, I paid attention to what was being said on January 5th. I was watching Parler. I was, seeing some of the 4chan comments. There was a lot of violent talk. We're starting to see that happen again. In fact, it was just reported that, on 4chan, they're talking about the grand jury as the names that were released as a hit list. They're going to go all Turner diaries on them and all this. Are you concerned about the potential violence of the kind of heated rhetoric and the kind of accusations you see from Trump and his supporters?
Absolutely. I mean, we see that across all sorts of social media platforms, and Common Cause has an extensive anti-misinformation and disinformation attempt to try to flag not only violent posts, but also telling voters to vote at an incorrect location, or trying to get them to vote on a different day than the actual election day. So we have an extensive network to try to push back against some of those things. But to your point, absolutely, violence, trying to invoke or call his supporters to violence if he doesn't get the outcome he likes is of course an outcome that we have to be very wary of. And hopefully I think this time certain law enforcement agencies were caught off guard. I think this next time, hopefully, I think people will be fully prepared in a way that everybody wasn't fully understanding for January 6th.
I sure hope so. I sure hope you're right. But it's going to be an interesting couple of months, maybe even a couple of years, watching this, and hopefully it will be live on television and we can all participate, but more importantly, see with our own eyes and hear the testimony that's being played out in a courtroom with people who are sweared in under the penalty of perjury, not on the F channel, not on social media, but actually in a court with the threat of perjury for lying. I think that's important. But Aaron, I appreciate you taking time for us. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again as this continues down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Rick.
Thanks so much, Aaron Sherb. He is the director, senior director of legislation at the Common Cause, commoncause.org, the website, if you want to take a look at the work that they do. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break, right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Just like Daddy.
They'll probably never know about his thousands of hours of on-the-job training.
There you go, Daddy.
Or that he spent as much time in the classroom as someone with a master's degree. You and I know he's one of the experts when it comes to electricity. Part of the team committed to doing the job right. They call him Dad. You call him the electrician right down the street. IBEW, the power professionals in your neighborhood.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And after years of politicians talking about it, they finally passed a big new infrastructure package to rebuild roads and bridges, fix drinking water systems, and make the energy grid more secure. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice as Americans.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, one of the things that's kind of concerning me is, look, you had Parler, which wasn't really a big player back in 2021. There were a lot of crazy people on there, and they felt quite emboldened to say all of the hateful, angry, racist kind of stuff that they were doing. Make all the threats, and it was a free-for-all. I now look at the fact that the right has taken over Twitter because Elon Musk bought it so that they could destroy it and turn it into a right-wing free-for-all. Now, understand, this is the weird part about this. Musk keeps saying, "Well, I bought it because I wanted to promote free speech. I wanted everyone to have a say," and then immediately says, "Well, you can have more say if you give me money." You give me the 8, 10, 12 bucks a month, whatever it is, and we'll give you a blue check mark, and you'll get 30 times or 35 times more views than a person who just gets it for free. Remember, it was about free speech. Never mind the irony of having to pay for your speech under the guise of free speech. But now you start seeing that people who have done the research on this stuff, that hate speech is on massively increased, use of derogatory terms and you know what they are, all of those words now through the roof, of which, look, to be honest, I would prefer you tell me who you are. So go ahead, say whatever you got to say. This way I know who you are. Back in the old days, I had a friend who, old black guy, from Georgia, oddly enough. I was probably in my early 20s. He was in his 60s. And he said, look, I preferred it much better when they would just walk up to me and call me the name that they were thinking, instead of smiling to my face and stabbing me in the back. And that stuck with me. I would rather people be open and honest about how horrible they are. And this is where I guess social media has allowed that to happen. I've been saying for the longest time, social media has allowed people to be the worst version of themselves, because there's this thin veil of anonymity. Now, sadly, that has transitioned into people are just turning into the worst versions of themselves. But I bring up the Musk thing because, again, free speech. Remember, this was all about free speech. He paid $44 billion for Twitter, turned it into a $20 billion company. Again, it's about free speech. Report today that evidently the company formerly known as Twitter, because it's now X, evidently they've been caught throttling certain websites back. So if you link to the New York Times, for instance, they're throttling that back so that it takes you longer to see it, so that maybe you give up on it, because we're in this instantaneous world. Now, me, if I want to see something, I'll wait for it, or I'll refresh it a couple of times, or I'll look for it somewhere else. If you're throttling me back, I now want to know why. But they understand through their algorithms and through their data collection that most people aren't like that. Most people, if it's a couple of seconds by, screw it. Next. Evidently, a lot of news organizations, a lot of the competitors, I guess Facebook is one that they've targeted as well. This is another one of those moments where be honest about what it is. Musk bought Twitter to destroy it. That was it. And to turn it into a right-wing space. To turn it again into another place that's powerful enough, because Truth Social, there's nobody there. The Gab, there's nobody there. There's nobody in these right-wing spaces because, well, there's no fun in just having an incestuous pool of incels yelling insults at each other, which is what those other sites are. I have a Truth Social account. I don't think I've ever posted there. Maybe something right at the beginning, hey, I'm here, but I don't spend time on it. I get it so I can look at some of the craziness, so I can ghost and look at how extreme these people really are. And this is one of those kind of moments where you look at this and you ask yourself, what was the point? Why did he buy Twitter? He bought it to destroy it for this moment. Because what was trending on Twitter today? And it's not even about, small hashtags. It was something like, Trump 2024 must happen right now, or some, sentence on a hashtag. It was about giving Trump cover. And we're going to see an awful lot of just vile stuff. My email box has been filling up with more and more. Because I do think we have to hold him accountable. I do think he has to be beaten at the ballot box. But I do think in the court, not just the court of public opinion, but in an actual courtroom, he does need to be held accountable. If for no other reason than to send a message to future wannabes that we're not going to tolerate it. We're not going to allow it. Just my thoughts. Want to hear yours. Miss any portion of the program? Make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Also, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. Then the Teamsters pushed the law so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind. The union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry? Clean energy. It means millions of jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. And lower utility costs for families. Congress, let's get it done.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.